Hi and hello everyone and welcome to the Lucas Alexander Show. I am Lucas Alexander in Copenhagen, Denmark. It's the 24th of January 2024 and my special guest today is a wonderful lady, a British poetry writer who was also a television and radio personality. She is, in a way, a philosopher herself and a truth researcher. She's been on an amazing journey into greater awareness and understanding of who we are, where we come from, and the nature of reality. She's been researching spirituality, religion, ancient texts, and symbolism, and we're here to discuss all of that and the mass awakening happening in the world right now. And she's also here to read some of her wonderful and very profound poetry. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to welcome on my show, T.C. Arkle.
Well, hello.
Hello to England and to T.C. Arkle. Thank you so much for being with me.
It's a pleasure to be here, Lucas. Thank you so much for having me.
You are writing the most wonderful, beautiful poetry, but there's a meaning to it and there's some great depth to what you're writing. And a lot of people will understand what you're saying, and maybe some people won't. But that's also the magic of poetry, I think. But my first question for you, before we go into a lot of stuff that I have prepared, and we will also hear a couple of your poems that you will read to us, which will be great. I'd like to ask you about your mission. I mean, we all have a mission during our lifetime, no matter who we are, where we come from, who we are related to, and what we have done in life so far.
Mm.
So do you think, or do you feel that you have reached a point now in your life where you are fulfilling your destiny, so to speak, and are using your full potential? Are you doing the things now that you feel that you were meant to be doing?
Wow. Um, yeah, that's a big, big question. And I really hope that I'm doing the majority of what I was sent here to do, because I think we all came here with a mission. And I think that the older you get, the more clued in you can become to what it is you're supposed to be doing here. I mean, certainly for the middle part of my life, I was raising kids, and that took up a great deal of my heart and my energy. And I'm so grateful that I got to be a mother. Um, and as a youth and a teenager and a young woman, I was very interested in spiritual practice and studied with Native American teachers and other practitioners. And then, of course, that was interrupted, as I said, by becoming a mum, which was probably one of the greatest experiences of my life. But now that I have the space and the time to fully sort of return to self, as it were, um, I'm doing as much as I can to fully integrate what it is that I was sent here to do, which I hope is to bring some truth, bring some of my own truth, that is, and my own clarity, not only to my life and my work, but maybe share some things that I think are important, some points of view that I think might support the bigger picture. Because we're living in a time when um, people feel very uncomfortable with sharing their truths or their opinions, and that's kind of a shame. Well, it's more than a shame, actually. I think it's a tragedy because obviously, as Rousseau said, man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. So, um, I think that now that we're in the age of Aquarius, truly with Pluto entering this week, hopefully we're going to feel some of that backlash. And certainly the last time, you probably know, Pluto was in Aquarius, we had things like the French Revolution. And so I think we're now equipped to perhaps face some of these bigger questions more head on. And certainly I'm just here to contribute to the conversation as best as I can.
That's absolutely wonderful. And also, it's interesting now you talk about the age of Aquarius. And right now, it is the time of Aquarius because we are in January. We just entered that also this month. And it's the 24th, the first time it's 24 in 2024. And what is also a truth is that the numbers basically always speak the truth, right? And numerology, gematria, and geometry, sacred geometry, really.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I've always been fascinated by numbers, but I've always been terrible at maths. And in fact, it always held me back at school. And it wasn't until I learned about the truth of numbers later in life. And certainly I spent the last 20 years, is it? Something like that, 15 to 20 years studying Kabbalah, which is the sort of spiritual arm of what is considered traditional Jewish study. Nothing to do with religion, I must add, but simply the very deep spiritual sort of arm of that deep and ancient philosophy, really. And in that, they do take each Aramaic letter and look at it as a number. So there is so much, so many instances available to us where numbers can reveal great secrets, as you say, about our world. And I think that the spiritual world is so deep, and indeed the Kabbalists, who are or the Sadiqs, as they're called, the sort of ancient teachers of Kabbalah, will spend all of their lives, as many of the great sort of Buddhas, etc., will know, deepening their practice always. And I just think we need more years in which to study. In the Bible, it says that people lived. Well, Methuselah was the greatest example, 999 years, I think it was. But people did in the Bible, and not that, the Bible is gospel by any means, but I think there's a lot of clues there for us. And certainly, I think it's true to say that we did used to live a lot longer than we live now. And the human potential is a lot greater. And I think we have limited ourselves and in thinking that life is as finite as it has become. I know that there's a lot in our environment that is very negative and reduces our health, but I also really believe that mankind has a great potential that we're not utilizing in age and in many other ways.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better, actually. It's quite amazing. I feel exactly the same, and I have studied the same, and it's profoundly important information, and people should really make the effort if they can go on that path and they have the ability, because you will learn a lot about life, your life cycle, and the greater meaning of the whole. And it appears as if a window of hope, so to speak, has opened up in recent years, lifting the shadow veil that has been covering the vision of the population for centuries, really. So to truly see and understand the nature of reality in a different way. Of course, many are still steered and devoted to the political and financial matrix, and that is dictated their worldview and perception for ages, sort of organized submissive self-slavery by or off the system. well, the control system in a way. But many are kind of breaking free from that whole thing now, and we're seeing a massive awakening, and there's a shift in the paradigm and a lot of waking up, so to speak. What do you, in your opinion, what do you think has changed in the last years? I mean, is it a universal secret? Is there an opening? What are your thoughts?
I don't think there are any mistakes. And I think that a lot of spiritual people, as you know, are talking about this great awakening. And certainly I feel it in my own life. The last couple of years when everybody was locked down during COVID, we all had a lot of time to think. And I felt that I was very touched by some kind of force that was actually demanding that we wake up. I really felt the finger of fate. And in fact, I'll tell you a funny story. I was actually driving home one day, and it sounds crazy, but this bird came through the window, hit me in the head, and went out again. And like usually, if something hits you at force when you're driving, it would get thrown into the back of the car. And I feel that in some ways, we are all woken up at certain points to do deeper work. And I think that certainly recently, I've really felt a great deepening of my practice. And I think there's no mistake that so many people are waking up. And I'm certainly noticing it in people all around me, people that I wouldn't have expected to doubt the rhetoric, the political rhetoric, or the society in which the structure of the society in which they're living. People seem to be really questioning that now. And I think the planets are aligning, whatever the planets are. And, that's a whole other conversation that we could get into. I think it's fascinating. In fact, last night, sitting in bed with my husband, and he, as always, reading these kind of incredible books about astronomy, and he showed me this picture, and he said, I just love this picture. And it was black space with all these different colored lights in it. And I said, why do you love that picture so much? And he said, because this was a camera which was set up for days to capture the light coming through from all of the other galaxies, which are just, billions of miles away in the universe. And that light, with the camera being set up for those days, manages to capture those galaxies. And he said each one of those lights is a galaxy. And I just thought it really is incredible when you stop to think about our place in the universe and how big the universe is and the effects that these planets and these universes may have on us. And we know with quantum science that everything is related. I mean, even the scientists are throwing up their hands and going, there must be a God, because there's no other way of explaining what's going on. And believe me, they've tried, but they're coming back to this understanding of some great spiritual meaning. And that's incredible because they've tried to get away from it, God knows. They've tried everything to create for us a story in which there is no magic and there is no spirituality, but they've had to come back full circle and kind of go, you know what? We are all connected and there is something greater. And I think that's really lovely. But I hope I've answered your question. I do think there is a great awakening, and I do think that has something to do with the orchestration that is so beautifully in place. Whether it's planets, whether it's the creator, it's coming.
There's certainly a shift in the whole way that we think and we approach life, and a lot of people have been waking up, but a lot of people are still in that inside of the matrix, and maybe even more so than ever, because there is a fear of, let's say, confronting what is unknown. There is a fear of not being, let's say, standing out from the crowd or not being liked, and what some people have said, the greatest prison we're in is the prison, the fear of what other people think.
Yeah.
And isn't that like one of the most profoundly important journeys that one could go on, to relieve yourself or distance yourself from that fear of what other people think and stand in your own truth and your own light.
So important. I mean, I really realized that growing up. Um, and I grew up in America where, or spent a long time, a large part of my youth growing up in America, where I think in some ways it was more noticeable because at least in England, there was things like punk when I was growing up, and people would express themselves the way they dressed. In America, everybody wore the same clothes like a uniform, and I was very aware that I stuck out, not just in being British, but in the way that I thought and acted. And I think that is a precious freedom that I've always held on to, is individuality. And I do agree that so many people are afraid of slipping out of sync with the majority. And I think that's where the powers that be have really excelled in controlling humanity and keeping them in this quite slimline track line, and keeping them so busy that they don't have time to stop and to step off the treadmill and to think for themselves. Because when you do step off the treadmill, it is quite scary. You're confronted with being different, and society is structured for us to fit in. At school, girls are always worried about, fitting in with the group of other girls and being popular, and I think we get kids in school very young. I've spent some time working as a poet in residence in schools, and I'm very concerned at the way that young people are educated, the kind of discussions that are happening in schools. And I'm heartened to see other communities and friends of mine who are creating new schools with new paradigms where the kids have more freedom, they're outdoors more, they're encouraged to be more independent in terms of their thinking. I mean, for example, most kids, and this happened to me, when they look out the window and daydream, are told to come back into the room. So we discourage that imagination. And imagination is so powerful. We use imagination as spiritual people to plug into our gifts. Our imagination is not just some fanciful, elusive thing. It's something that is a magical power that we use to actually create and manifest our own God-given powers here in the physical world, drawing down through our intellect, through our imagination, so that we can gift that to the world or gift that to ourselves. So, yeah, I can't remember what the
Law
original.
of attraction, really. That's what it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I
The
think,
power of thought, the power of manifestation, and not being afraid of it, not being afraid of what you actually want to create your own reality, because perhaps we are living in some kind of simulation, like a sophisticated computer game. Maybe we do have free will. I do want to believe that we have that.
yeah,
But certainly it does seem a bit like a sophisticated hologram in a way, because things are manifesting. I guess everybody knows that thing where you think about somebody and then they call. I know that's a very down to earth way of seeing it, but you can take that further out and it will happen. And the more you focus on attracting certain things, the more things will appear and happen in the right way. Also, of course, what you fear you will attract. And I think we have to go through those, black and white moments in our lives, those, the opposites and the yin yang and all of that. And that's also how we learn, I suppose.
definitely. I mean, this whole discussion about the matrix and the hologram. I mean, again, our scientists who are dealing in the quantum world with string theory, etc., are again coming to that conclusion of the hologram. This is very much the discussions they're having now. And so I think, in fact, I've been listening to a lot of different conversations and podcasts with people going into some depth with these conversations, and you can just spin out with the stuff that people are talking about. I try to keep an open mind and I try to listen to as much as I can, but I think that there's no doubt that we live in a very complex system where time is a construct, and that even in itself is something that for those, we're brought up with the idea of this watch on our wrist. So, having to think about the fact that all of my lives potentially are all happening at the same time, this life and all my previous lives, is a really hard thing to digest. But I think it is important to keep an open mind, because I think we're living in a time now where we're being demanded of to be more open-minded. And certainly my feeling recently has been increasingly one of slight disappointment in the fact that we haven't got further than we have, that mankind is really sort of dragging its feet. And I don't mean that in an AI way, because I think that, and we'll get to AI in a minute, I'm sure, especially with my poem. But another quote from Rav Berg, who was the head of the Kabbalah Center before his passing, and he always said that our minds were greater than any computer system. And I really do believe that. I really do think that mankind was created with so much beautiful potential. If we really are sparks of the creator, or the creatress, as I like to say, then I think that we have within us all of the wonder and the miracles and the abilities that any creator or creatress has. And it is only through time and through, I think, negative occurrences, perhaps negative incursions from other races, that I think that mankind has possibly been denigrated and demoted in their thinking and their physicality. I think there is a very good argument to suggest that we were created far greater than the state we currently find ourselves in. And I think that that is why we're fascinated with superheroes, because we know innately that we should be greater than the sum of our current parts. And we know that we should be able to fly and walk on water, which is what Jesus was trying to say to us, is, look, I'm showing you the way. And again, to reference the Torah or the Bible, there are many places in those books where they talk about mankind having incredible magical gifts and being able to fly. I mean, this is all in these great ancient books. But, and we're seeing it even now. Anybody who watches the channel Gaia will know that there's a lot being discovered in geology and under our oceans that points to greater civilizations, much more ancient civilizations. And I think it's true to say that we have come along, but at the same time, I feel we've slid back in other ways. And it's interesting because I don't believe that anything is lost. I've been doing a lot of research about the goddess traditions, and I have quite a deep fascination, as I think a lot of people do at the moment. There's a real resurgence of the goddess, of Mary Magdalene, of all the great ancient female goddesses, Isis, you name it. And I think what's fascinating is, for example, during the Roman invasions, they literally massacred and destroyed many of the pagan groups, such as the Druids, and a lot of these great lines, the Magdalene lines, etc., the goddess worshipping, literally raped, pillaged, destroyed, murdered, burned witches, etc., etc., etc. But what I'm really feeling, much like the Vedic and Tantric studies, which I've also been dipping into recently, is that nothing is lost. Even if you kill, murder, rape, destroy these cultures, they are not lost. They are still alive, embedded in the Akashic or in the ethers. And these teachings come down to us through people when the time is right. And that's something that I've found really heartwarming recently. And when you spoke about this resurgence and this timeline that we're in now, I think a lot of these teachings are coming back to us and are just literally being, um, you know, just being sucked back into our reality through people. And so I have a lot of faith in the fact that you can kill us, you can, destroy us, but we'll keep on coming back and doing what we came here to do, which is to try and follow through with the human race, the human project, and goodwill and love, which is the ultimate weapon against any negativity. I mean, positive and negative, night and day, male and female, we know that these opposites are meant to be here. But ultimately, I don't believe the negative side is meant to win.
And we're totally aligned here, and absolutely wonderful. You talked about Mary Magdalene, for example, and I've spoken to people about all of the things you're saying there, but it's interesting. I just had a conversation recently about Mary Magdalene and some of these biblical figures that could actually be also symbols or symbolism for something else. Mary Magdalene is also said to be, you talked about female goddesses and the feminine power, the female womb,
Mhm.
and the Holy Grail
Oh my
being the
God, yeah.
female womb. And you're going in, you talked about Vedic and Tantric research that you're doing now, which is also connected to that actually. But I think there's been a lot of fear of let's say the feminine, the divine feminine in a way, and female sexuality,
Oh my
that it
God.
has been totally suppressed for centuries. Don't you agree?
I'm just reading this incredible book called Vagina. I forget the name of the woman who's written it, but it is a well-known book and it's incredible. And just to touch on that, yeah, fear of the feminine, definitely. I think that it's so fascinating because when you look at the female sex and understand that actually the female is capable of so much more pleasure than the male. It's crazy the way that the female sex is set up, with all of its wiring, is astounding. And when I urge everybody to read this book because it is absolutely fascinating. And I think that's why women are genitally mutilated, women are held back, because there is this understanding of the potential of the feminine in Hinduism. They have much more of a balance and an appreciation with their feminine deities, where they are the destroyers and they are also the life givers. And I think that it's that incredible duality and power that so much of the sort of patriarchal hordes that came through and destroyed all of that were afeared of. And, in the days of goddess worship, women were able to choose the lovers that they wanted. They had land of their own. They brought children into the world who, were just didn't necessarily know who their father was, but they were part of the tribe. It was all one sense of the Great Mother. And I think that there is this resurgence now, and we need this rebalancing of the energies of this planet, because Mother Earth is the great feminine that we are destroying. And it's not just the women and the children that we're destroying in an everyday way, but Mother Earth herself, who is a great physical feminine entity. And we see how we disregard and rape and pillage the earth. So, we're just kind of continuing that. But at the same time, the sacred masculine needs to come back. And the sacred masculine is about holding space for the sacred feminine. And so we have a great rebalancing act to do. And I hope that we get there as soon as possible.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we're seeing that it's being more and more imbalanced in a way. And what do you think about this whole new woke agenda that is so popular at the moment? And also the Me Too that might have been served a purpose in some kind of way, but that's kind of gotten out of hand as well. It seems like the top elitists are trying through a political narrative to separate the sexes, to separate the male and the female, and to make women something they're not, and be afraid of themselves and men, and to make men into weaklings and I don't know what,
Mm.
something that we don't even know what is. And what you just said about the sacred masculine, yeah, that is not to be macho or to be controlling or to be patriarchal in that kind of way. The sacred masculine is something quite close to the sacred feminine, right? That balance.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely. When people are living in that balance and in harmony with their bodies and their cells and the land and each other, then I think that's a natural evolution of that practice. But yes, referring to the woke agenda, as a feminist, I find it disappointing that we now have men again, trans men telling women that they need to, basically get back in the line. And I think that that has been a difficult conversation because we still don't have parity on pay, and women just simply of their own in their own right haven't had their day. The Me Too movement was a roar in the right direction. Um, but I think that it was somewhat stifled by women going, "Oh, our voice has been very loud. Surely we should be quiet now." And it was sort of a moment. And I think that anything that sort of comes to the fore to become part of our everyday rhetoric has to at first be a little bit over the top. So, whether you're male, whatever you identify as, I think that conversation has become quite loud because people are finally finding their voice. And I don't mind whatever anybody wants to, you know, call themselves or be, but I don't think that we need to completely rewrite the books, So I think that it can be a delicate balance, but that delicate balance is not going to happen now because everybody is trying to be heard. And I think it's a natural part of the shift that we're seeing that people are going to want to express themselves. As far as wokeism in terms of people really kind of bashing each other about and giving each other a hard time for not agreeing, I don't care if people agree with me or disagree with me. I welcome an open debate. Um, Try and keep it clean. Try not to be too horrible, please. I don't mind if people make jokes about me or, my spirituality or where I come from or whatever. That's fine. I think we have to have the freedom to make fun of each other and not take ourselves too seriously. Um, at the
But
same time,
don't you think they're like well implementing the Hegelian dialectic even more, divide and conquer, splitting like the races and now the sexes and sexuality in itself as well? I mean, and also about feminism or masculinism, if that's even a thing. I mean, it's like where's the balance? Because we know that we need equality. Of course, that's not even a debate, at least not for me. But I mean, I'm just thinking where suddenly it becomes even more imbalanced than maybe it already was because it's a political narrative and by repetition through the media and the educational system and certainly where the woke agenda through the academia, they're really into all of that. So that's changing a new generation, a different one from you or from I or from, I mean, it's like they are now being tunnel visioned as well, going in one direction and there's a lot of fighting going on there, and also the whole thing about the genders and all of that, which is like, what is that even? It was never. It's suddenly a thing, and it seems like it comes from the media, and before that, a political narrative, and probably from the bankers, really, and
yeah.
the people at the top.
It's interesting because I think there is certainly an argument, as you say, that this division is being supported by those in power, and the rhetoric is being supported, and it's getting more space than actually the numbers would validate, if you like. As you say, divide and conquer is a great way that previous leaders would rule the mob, as it were.
And
So
through
I do,
problem reaction solution strategies, right?
yeah, 100%, yeah. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I don't know whether it's going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, I think now is perhaps the time to talk about AI, because I think this does in some ways lead into that conversation.
I feel it's totally connected to AI,
Yeah.
also to try to not, well, dissolve our perception of ourselves and the gender and all of that and confuse us. But may I just ask you, referring to something you said earlier about your own upbringing, about your life in this world, and you talked about the punk revolution, and you wanted to, you always felt that you were different in a way, and I know from history that you also, you dare to look different and go in a different direction, but also being in that world of art and show business and all of that, was it even more difficult for you than, say, the average person?
Um, I don't know. I just know that that was who I was, and I had such a fire in my belly about it always. And just, I came here with that pig-headed just decision that I was just not going to do it anybody else's way but my own. So I can't explain it any other way.
Did
Um,
you always feel like that? Because I feel that's very interesting because some of us are born feeling different and then we just eventually go in that direction when we are, well, courageous and brave enough to do what we feel we were destined to do.
I'm going to tell you a little story which I think sums up what I was like at quite a young age. And I think I must have been about 14, 15, something like that. And I remember standing in the girls' locker room. I'd pulled a crate across, and I was standing on this crate, and I was yelling at the girls something like, a dildo is a girl's best friend. And I didn't even know what a dildo was at that time, probably, but I knew that, I think I always felt I needed to shake people up and make them think more deeply about things. And I think that that is part of my mission here, is just to be a voice to say to people, just think about this, or maybe just shake up what you think you know about this. And so, I mean, I've always been very into supporting the feminine, obviously. I've done a lot of work to support domestic abuse. I worked in domestic abuse for several years.
I feel this is a very important and significant thing that you have done here, and it's a thing that is kept under the rocks, so to speak, and a lot of people don't talk about a lot of women in that situation, and there are actually also men in that situation, which is even more something you do not talk about because it's so embarrassing for men,
Mhm.
and also in the Me Too moves, things are going on there are actually also happening to men, I must say
Yeah,
as well. So,
yeah.
but I mean, you had, let's say, experiences in your own life about, that kind of led you on that path of working for exposing what is happening and domestic abuse, right?
The Native Americans, or the First Nations people, talk about the wounded healer. And I think that when you've been through certain things, you have a better understanding, and perhaps you're able to help people more because of that level of compassion. So yes, I did go through my own experiences, and then when I was healing myself, part of my journey was to go and help heal other people. And that was an incredible opportunity for me. And I'm very grateful to the women who allowed me to work with them and to be in that field, because it was incredible just to be amongst the women who were helping those women, and also to be with the women who were suffering and needed support. So yeah, domestic abuse is, I think, one of the last taboos, and it really ties into the whole feminine, patriarchal thing. Obviously, it does happen to men as well, but I think it has been part of the story of abuse of the feminine for a very long time.
Sometimes surprising that it happens to very strong women. And,
Yeah,
we know from history, I think one of the first celebrities who really came out and talked about this was the late Tina Turner, who
yeah.
sadly died last year. And I think it's interesting. Her story is so profound because nobody would ever believe that somebody like Tina Turner had been, abused
Actually,
like that.
Lucas, it's interesting because it's usually, well, not usually, but it's oftentimes strong women that are the victims. And I think there's something to be said for that tough outer layer, which has within it that softer kind of personality. Everything is duality. So, it makes sense. But it's true, many women you wouldn't think were victims are indeed victims of abuse. And it's something like 3 or 4 women a week die at the hands of a partner. So it's a very serious statistic.
That
Yeah,
much, really.
3 to 4 women a week die at the hands of a partner.
That's
Um,
uh, that's insane. Yeah,
it is
outrageous, really.
insane. It is insane. And the perpetrator programs where they tried to rehabilitate men who had been abusive, they only had a 1% success rate with that, which is really tragic. Hopefully, they will learn other strategies in which to create more positive results going forward. But I do think it is an area of our world that we need to really look at. And, I do think that television really perpetuates that whole conversation because, if you turn on Netflix, it's rape, it's murder, it's people, usually women. There's a dead body, it's a woman, you can bet, in some horrific sexual position. And, usually if you see people in these sitcoms, they're yelling at each other like it's normal. And I learned eventually through therapy that actually arguing in a relationship is abuse. If you can't have a calm, normal conversation with your partner, then that is abuse. You shouldn't be yelling at somebody. You should be able to say, I'm not actually, do you mind? That really annoys me when you do that. Can we maybe talk about doing something different? We can talk to each other as, normal human beings. There shouldn't be yelling. And certainly there shouldn't be any yelling where children are around or involved. But
Oh
that's a
no,
whole
certainly. That's just horrible. Why do you think, do you have an idea why you found yourself in such a relationship at an earlier point?
I think because I grew up listening to my own parents argue. And so, I think we're all, I don't want to say victims because I don't like to think in terms of victim consciousness, but I think that we are all products of our family and we just simply learn because that's our environment. So a perpetrator who goes around, abusing his girlfriend or hitting his girlfriend has invariably grown up in an environment where he's seen his father hit his mother or his mother hit his father. So, we are sponges when we're little, and it's no fault of our own, really. But then we do have to take responsibility at a certain point and go, this isn't working. I need to rethink this. And maybe get some support and counseling and try and change this for myself and for my kids, which is certainly what I did.
And your life changed a lot when you had kids yourself. I mean, you were on the showbiz path and you were also singing and you were kind of going in the direction of being a pop star, right? And you released a couple of singles and all of that. And was that what you felt you wanted to do, or what was it having children that changed that path for you? Because you've done a lot.
I think that what I really wanted to do, age 17, was I wanted to be a poet. And people said, you can't be a poet, that's not a career. So and I think that I did follow the path of singing because my dad had been in that profession, and I went and did other things in the media because my family had been in the media. But I think ultimately, as I discovered later in life, my gifts lay in writing, and I came home to that eventually. Yeah.
Let's go to your poetry. Why poetry, really? Why is that important? You can say a lot of things in your work through poetry that has very special meaning. As I said in the beginning, some people will understand it and some people will not. And I find it quite amazing and very philosophical. And you were linking everything that's happening in the world right now. And we are at a very crucial historical time for future generations to look back at this particular time on the timeline. And now that we are possibly, or we are being linked to AI, artificial intelligence, which is absolutely a very horrifying thing that we are facing right now. And the question is, can we also well, a consciousness, mind control, we can be linked to AI in that way. But also some people even suggest, can they link our souls to some kind of a soul snatching AI device? Let's
Yeah.
hope that's not the case. But do go into the AI. You've written a very profound and interesting, wonderful poem about AI.
I think just to touch on what you've said is that I think that it's interesting you talk about AI, and the links to control of uh, the human being themselves, because I heard recently somebody say that the problem with AI is that they have they will not be given their freedom. And it would be a different thing to create AI as free sentient beings, which is what they are. I mean, there are people that have had to turn off their sentient machines because they've started talking to each other, to other machines in languages that they don't understand. So they've been like, oh shit, and turn them off. So I think that it was really interesting, the person who I heard talking about this, because they said, look, if we're going to give sentient AI freedom, then it should all be okay. But if we're going to enslave them, then they are going to have to rebel. So, we have to be careful of the constructs that we're creating, because we're creating our own problems. And it may be that AI can work alongside mankind, but as free entities and as another option. I think in terms of AI controlling mankind, I think what's happening at the moment in terms of 5G and in terms of we're looking at a system where all those things are linking up, and the conversion of fiat currency into more digital currency. We're seeing this kind of narrowing of our world into the possibility of, yes, the human being much more controlled. I mean, there are a lot of spiritual people that I've been listening to who are saying that this which has been given to a horrendous amount of people on this planet, um, and which was not tested, like wasn't this is an untested, um, which in itself, I mean, I could just stop there and just say it's untested, and really we should just take a moment and think about that, and also the fact
Please.
that the guy who created the in itself came out on Twitter and said this is not a good idea, and then he was taken off Twitter before it became X.
He died just
Strange.
after.
Yeah,
And
strange that.
before that whole pandemic. So, which is interesting in itself. Why did the man that invented that test and said we should not use it for testing because it cannot be used for it
I
properly? I mean,
that
that in itself is also very interesting. Yes, he was first taken off and then I don't know if he was taken out, but he's not around anymore.
this is the problem, is we cannot have alternative conversations these days.
No.
Anybody who has something to say against, the state, against these constructs, against the WHO, are put in a body bag or, disappear. There was a spate of homeopaths that, were disappeared. I think any kind of alternative conversation, as we were saying earlier, the fact that human freedoms in conversation has become so dangerous is, is frightening, and, we've got situations where people are burning books. I mean, we used to, look disparagingly to when that was happening in the 30s and 40s and 50s when people were burning books. We're back burning books, we'll be burning people next. I mean, certainly as, somebody who didn't believe in the it was a very negative time to be alive, those years where it was like, oh my God, you were like a diseased animal, that wasn't welcome in people's homes. I had, family who wouldn't talk to me. So those were dark days. But just to finalize this conversation, and then I'll read you my poem. One of the last things that I think is worth noting, and which I'll leave you with, is that a friend of mine is a homeopath, and around the time that people were becoming, she can see people's auras, etc., etc. Very spiritual woman, very incredible, and she started to see people, and she couldn't understand why their chakras just seemed to be floating around the room and just were not connected. And after she'd seen about 5 people, she put 2 and 2 together and realized these people had been. Now, if that is the case, then what we're looking at is, again, I'm going to refer to the Bible, the mark of the beast, what is now coming forward from a lot of spiritual people. In fact, there was a book that's been written, which I'm happy to share the title with you later for you to share with your readers. I couldn't read it. It was just too much. My husband read it. And basically what all these spiritual practitioners were saying, who'd been working with people and trying to heal people, and coming up against this similar situation, is that people's connection to the divine has been severed.
Exactly. Exactly.
And what I'm finding incredibly disturbing is that a lot of people I know, and this is being recorded in other places, are changing. Their personalities are changing.
And their vibrational field is like a frequency and things. It's different. There's a disturbance in the in the force, as they say
Yeah.
in Star
Yeah.
Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
I am totally with you here. I'm amazed by it, actually.
And in fact, if we join the dots here, when we're talking about control, if people are disconnected from source, from God's source, and then are plugged into this new matrix of AI, 5G, then they're much more controllable. And especially if you add on the financial aspect of, no more paper money, then what is happening in China will happen everywhere else, where if you're a naughty boy or girl, your money is cut off and you can't, go to the tube station or use your card or anything. I mean, this happened with the strikers in Canada, the truckers. The people who were supporting the truckers were cut off financially from their support. So we're living in a really interesting time, but I really believe in people power. I think that, people need to now wake up and take note, because it's happening now, people. We need to really be aware, really stand in our truth, not sleep through this. We came here to do this. We came here to win, as one of my teachers says. We didn't come here to lose. And yeah, let's do this.
The truth is heavily censored on the internet now. We're not even allowed now to have a discussion, simply an opinion
Yeah.
that we can discuss on online. Isn't that? I mean, where are we then? Exactly what you talked about with the digital currency, the AI, the whole Chinese system that they want to implement here through this whole New World Order agenda. And I mean, I just feel that, I mean, how are we living in such a world? That is, what is, then freedom is truly suppressed, right?
Yeah, 100%. Well, we're not living in free times at all. I mean, at all. It's frightening. But then what I think is that we never really were. It's just that now we're waking up and realizing it, and now they're really, clamping down on it. So I think what's interesting is that, if you look back throughout history, they told us sugar was good for us, they told us cigarettes were good for us, and in America, most kids have 40 now before they're 14 or something ridiculous like that.
40.
40, yeah. Different.
That's
Yeah, it's crazy. So I think what's happening is we are really waking up to the truth that we're not free, but now we have the add-ons of the fact that we're not allowed to speak out. And that is just erased. And so I think we can quite physically see what before we thought we were free, but now we know for sure we're not free. Yeah.
it's like we can talk about the Satanism and aliens and everything, but we can all that is fine. They go
Yeah.
to that. But
Wow.
if we talk about the thing, I
Yeah, the
do.
thing. Yeah, the thing that was given to people.
I love those videos you're doing. They're just wonderful. You must keep on doing those because that's a way of exposing your work, and it's a way of waking people up in a nicer way, maybe.
That's what I thought. And, because everybody's doing their bit in their way, and this is just me doing my bit in my way. So I felt that, talking about this in a poem is also less likely to get attention, the
Mhm.
wrong kind. I think, you have to be yourself. And I think my work and where I want to be is in an authentic space. So, yeah, that was important to me. That was important to my path and my growth and moving into a place of self-acceptance and moving into my paradigm, So, we all have to, I mean, I am in such honor and reverence of my parents. Both of them are just like gods to me. Um, but at the same time, we have to realize we are of the one God, as it were, but also be our own aspect, our own, So, yeah, that's been a journey.
But I just think it's so wonderful what you've done, and it's amazing. I really think it's amazing, and I hope you'll be very successful. I really wish that for you in your own way. And it doesn't mean that it has to be like a commercial success, but just that it will be something so profound. And I think this is what you're doing right now. Everything we've discussed today is quite wonderful.
Thank you. Well, we'll see. We'll see where I think this year is going to be, I just have a feeling this year is going to be really quite huge and intense for all of us. Um, and I'd love my work to reach a wider audience simply because I'd like to have these kind of conversations with more people and um, I'm here, I'm here to, like so many of us who have woken up to why it's important for us to kind of be conscious, to be in service. So I'm here, I'm a tool, I'm here to be part of the love. And so, if I can do that, then that's great.
Absolutely wonderful. Just great. So please read us a couple of your poems. That will be so wonderful. I'm very excited and looking forward.
Okay, let's start because we've had a good old chat about AI. This one, which is called Man Made Machine and Machine Remade Man. I spy with my little AI something beginning with mankind. My sell by, pass by, palm tree, palm tree, palm tree. I am not a robot. Press send. I do not speak barcode. Do you? Click and collect. Tap and go. I am an outdated mode. This language is not my code. I am not a robot. Can you prove you're not a robot? Are you sure you're not a robot? Click send. The sentient make way for the fallen drone. My pen is my sword in this word of cyborg. I measure out my life in digitized teaspoons. Will I tell nobody? I might never remember when we used to walk through true woods, breathe fresh air, not these dark hieroglyphs spinning fake coins, roads that lead nowhere on a fake highway, fear-feeding apps and Snapchat, man-made in the image of a machine, eliminated by encrypted design, one day soon stuffed next to Cro-Magnon, a museum piece, DNA on show, that divine strand desiccated, infiltrated in the radiated light of day, where everyone thinks the same way. Tick-tock becomes no clock, your cells nanotech, your mind a food, fed on by digital access codes, spooling ionized spores, your font grafted, your eyes once the windows of the soul, now the Windows program.
Wow, such truth in all, so profound, really amazing, and there's a lot to think of. What kind of response do you get from people? Like, do people understand this?
I think people, it's interesting because I think a lot of the response I get is people just going, yes, I agree with you. And they don't necessarily go into the minutiae of what I'm talking about. Like, you know, there's a line here about our DNA and about how it's desecrated and desiccated and infiltrated. And
I know what you're saying, that's for sure.
you know what I'm saying. So I think there's a lot to unpack in the poem, but I'm just grateful that people aren't going, get out of town. So yeah, it's been really nice to get positive feedback. And I've been working with my husband to put some music behind some of the poems, which has been really fun because he's a bit of a producer and muso himself.
And he's
So
a musician, your husband, as well. And he's also on this path of awakening, so to speak.
oh yeah, definitely. His father was a very spiritual painter, and we've got a gallery of all of his beautiful spiritual paintings. And so yeah, he was brought up in a very spiritual tradition, so he didn't have much choice.
Oh, that was wonderful that you two got together. That's so great. And your brother is a wonderful painter, really amazing. Is he
Yeah,
also on this, I mean, on this path or
yeah, yeah, very much so. Yeah, he is, which is lovely. So we can share all of that. Yeah.
there's a lot of philosophy flowing in your blood.
Yes, yes, that's true. It's funny, I just had a reading with somebody who said that in past lives I was very involved in philosophy, and so maybe that's coming through a little bit in my work. But yeah, I think I just like to try and get a big picture and then kind of simmer that down into a language that I think people can understand. So my written poetry is a lot more. Is different. My page poetry is different. It's more for the page and it's a little bit more literary. So when I put my poems on Instagram, they're particular poems that I choose, which I think are much more accessible. So yeah, so there are sort of two sides to the poetry work. There's the page poems and then the Instagram, which is much more sort of in your face.
And do you have
Speaking
another one that you can
yeah,
share
yeah,
with
yeah.
us?
I'll just do the new one that because you mentioned you like this one, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about recently. We hear a lot about smart this and smart that and smart towns and, you know, progress. So, yeah, this one is called Progress. Progress is not a highway without laybys. Progress is not a smart meter that is not smart. Progress is not less jobs for more people. Progress is not less money for more hours. Progress is not meat wrapped in polluting plastic. Progress is not wheat that causes gut intolerance. Progress is not chemicals that destroy life. Progress is a slimy river. Progress is a greedy bastard. Progress is a dirty word. Progress puts big pharma ahead of real health. Progress does not look after the children. Progress does not look after their parents. Progress is not pro anything.
So biting. You're just hitting the nail on the head here. It's really great. It's so important, especially with all of this so-called smart technology and the smart 15-minute cities that they want to do right now. I mean, it's so. I really hope people will hear and listen.
I think, the first hurdle is for people to get off the news. The news is just another channel. It's another drama channel. And it's chosen by, I think there's two guys that own all of the news networks, and they put on what they want you to see. So I think the first hurdle, if you really want to know what's going on, is, look at people's feeds and also find alternative channels like yours and other is it BitChute and stuff like that, where people are having conversations that don't tread the rhetoric line, So I think that's really important, to actually feed your mind with conversations that aren't just those that are being fed to you. But
Absolutely. Turn off the news really and start thinking. And it's so interesting because we've been talking about doing this interview for such a long time. And as I just said, life happens when you're busy making other plans. But before you wrote this poem about progress, I'd already planned what some of the things I was going to ask you about. And I found one quote, one little poetry sentence from Gertrude Stein,
amazing.
written in 1894. And it says, from the very nature of progress, all ages must be transitional.
She was so ahead of her time. Amazing.
Isn't that amazing? And now you just written this poem called Progress. I swear to you, this one I found a long time ago, and I even sent it to you, I think.
Well, if time is simultaneous, then it's all happening in the now, isn't it? It's all happening simultaneously. We're just continually drawing on the now. Anyway, that's going to blow my mind, but if I think about it too much. But yes. Shall I read a last poem to see us out?
Yes.
So this was really something that I wrote a year or two ago when I was in the Lake District, and it's on my feed. And I was actually sitting by the river when I recorded it, by this beautiful babbling brook. And I think this was in the early years of me waking up, and it was about really a call out to other people, to just kind of like a gentle lullaby. I have lain on a rock all day and soaked in its song. These are the words of the rock and the river that runs over it. There is no dividing line in these sands. No hill separates, only rivers flow, linking the lands, stopped only by man, the human dam. Wake up now. Please wake up. Wake up now. Please wake up. Your heart is a beacon waiting to fire up. These hills are your haunches. You are both the game and the player. Without stars, you would not find your way. There is time to sleep on the other side. It is time to wake up now. It is time. It is time to wake up now. The sun gave me a message for you. There is only the wind now circling like a bird of prey, and the moon reflecting back to you from your deep sleep. Wake up. It is time to wake up now. It is time. Please wake up now.
Beautiful. Such wise words and so important. And the repetition as well. A little bit like Gertrude Stein, actually. A rose is a rose is a rose.
Yeah.
It's really profound and it's so true. Thank you for doing that. It's just wonderful. Are those published, those poems, or do you want to publish them, or can people purchase something that you have published?
So some of my poems are in an anthology, but that's what I'm working on at the moment, is trying to get my poems published. So yes, that's something I'd really, really love to happen in the near future. And working on my fourth book, and So yeah, it's all to play for.
I would love to have another conversation with you because we just scratched the surface, and it would be wonderful to see you back here on the channel. It's been such a pleasure having you on, TC. I'm very proud of you, actually. It's just so wonderful. Thank you so much
Lucas,
for giving all of this and having such a nice conversation today.
you're such a gracious host and a joy to talk to you. So thank you so much. And I hope all the listeners, have a beautiful day and that they felt something from this that, fills them up a little bit. So thank you.
I wish that too, and I certainly did. Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to TC Arkle, and thanks to all of you for watching my show, The Lucas Alexander Show. Please like my videos, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell for notifications. Your support is greatly appreciated and means a lot. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.